with David Ian and Kate Dale.
The show that plumbs the depths of mediocrity, celebrates the ordinary, and enjoys the everyday.
Hello and welcome to Mediocre Gay, the podcast. I'm Kate Dale.
And I am David Ian.
David, what's been bothering you this week?
Bothering me. I mean, so many things. Actually, I was talking to my friend the other night about music from when we were kids. And it reminded me, so I was a massive fan of Eternal. Do you remember Eternal?
Yes. Don't make me sing the song.
No. Please don't. And I remember I got really passionate about the fact that when I was in primary school and we had to write about our favourite band or something and who our favourite band member was. And my favourite band member was Kelly. And I'd written this out and I got into trouble for spelling her name wrong because I spelled it Kelle with accents on each of the E's. What's that called?
Is it that way?
Yeah.
It's an acute, isn't it? It's a grave.
Right,
It's that way. It's an acute, yeah.
And I got told I'd spelt it wrong and I hadn't. I'd got it right.
God, the injustice. That burning injustice when you were a child, when you know you're right.
30 years I've held on to this.
Okay, so can we make this a purging so that you can get rid of and put that little piece of anger down?
Yeah, but I got, because I was a member of the fan club,
obviously.
They sent me a signed poster.
Oh.
Yeah. So I took it in, showed her.
And I can just imagine how much your teachers loved you.
My teachers did love me because I was a teacher's pet. So anyway, who is with us this week, Kate?
We have a fantastic guest this week. We have Kathy Manuira, who's an amazing character comedian, writer and actor.
Hello.
Welcome,
Thanks
Kathy.
for coming.
Happy to be here.
So tell us about what you're up to, what you've been doing.
What am I up to? Well, I'm working on my first solo show.
Exciting.
My debut hour, so to speak.
Does it have a name yet?
It at the moment is called Objectivity, but I am not sure if it's going to be called that in the end. But
You are speaking to somebody who already regrets naming their first show something.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. I know. That's the thing. I feel like it's like when you choose your signature and then you get locked in too soon.
But I have a solution because what I have now done after having had my first show, but I now have names for the following 3 shows. So I have to make them.
Get them in the bank early.
Right.
So it will be, because I do character comedy and of late I've only been doing objects. So it will be like an hour of me pretending to be loads of different objects, basically.
I love it.
So that will be, that's the thing, I've already got slots booked in for it at festivals next year. So I'm like, I have to write it now.
Yep.
That's the way. That's what you do,
how this
right?
works.
Yeah,
This is,
exactly.
otherwise you will not write it.
I was once told that how you do a triathlon is you just book the triathlon and then you will have to do it.
triathlon,
So it's like that, but less wet.
I like that I'm like, yes, as if I have the faintest idea.
Glasgow Comedy Festival in April, Brighton in May, and then probably Edinburgh. And work in progresses until then. So that's fun because I'm in a duo as well called Horseplay. And up until now, all the kind of hour-long shows I've done have been two-hander, kind of narrative shows. So I love that, but it's really exciting to think about what it is, and scary to be doing it by myself.
What do you think the differences are going to be?
I think it's interesting because we're both working on solo shows, and I think it's really interesting to find out. The reason we work so well together is because our sense of humour is really similar, and we're interested in the same kinds of stuff, and we love character-led stuff and absurdity. But it's interesting to see how it diverges when we start working on solo things. So I think the stuff I do is, somebody used the word whimsical to describe my comedy, which is a bit twee and I don't really like it, but I think it's a bit more, there's something about being objects, and it's a kind of very pure silliness, I think. And Derek Mitchell, my comedy partner, is really brilliant at building out like fully formed human characters. So he will do an hour of a character.
Yeah.
Which I always find so impressive. The kind of like Anna Mann, Diane Chorley-esque world building, which I personally struggle to do by myself. I'd much rather pretend to be like a straw, which is what I do.
Which seems perfectly logical. I mean, to me, that sounds way harder.
It's interesting, but that's the thing is, I think, and we've both had that conversation together where we both think that what the other person does is harder, and it's fun to see how Even within the niche of character comedy, which is already niche, it manifests in totally different ways.
I mean, you get that with so many things, because the amount of people that are like, oh, being a stand-up comedian must be so difficult. And you're like, oh no, being a human's difficult.
But I think that, because I don't do stand-up as myself, really. And I'm like in awe of stand-ups, because I'm like, how do you...
Really?
Yeah, because you're just talking.
But it's...
I don't know.
I was going to say, it's just any old it's not just any old obviously it's all beautifully crafted and carefully written, but the flight of fancy, and the word whimsical is horrific, but I can see why they used it, and I'm trying to think of a better word, because it is a bit icky, isn't it, as a word, but it is. But that thing of the straw, and I've seen your stuff, it is so well, sorry, this is going to sound really patronisingly faint phrase, but so well thought through, and it's absolutely that thing of the way you bring it to life and actually get truths out there. I don't know where I'm going with this, really. Truths about a straw. But there is something, but it's very realised and very multidimensional.
I mean, I personally am in complete awe of people who do characters full stop. I mean, in particular character comedy, because comedy is so hard anyway. But I can't understand how, like, the creativity involved to come out of a character is just so far beyond my abilities. It's the reason why I don't do Halloween, because I can't dress up, because you need to be creative to do that, and I can't do it.
But I think it's so funny, because to me
Which, by the way, is bad for a gay man. not being able to do Halloween is a real disadvantage.
Yeah.
But I think to me it's protective. It's easier, because I'm not myself on stage. So if I bomb, I'm like, they don't like the character. It wasn't me.
Yeah. I can see that. And I think, because when people say to me, oh, you're so brave doing that. And I'm like, well, it's just showing off for 5 minutes with a microphone. It's really not. But then there are days when if it doesn't go well, and I do talk about quite personal stuff, and yes, it's all processed and everything, but that exposing of, not literally, exposing of yourself, though if it goes really badly, you never know, but that exposing can sometimes feel, I mean, I'm not comparing, I sound really pretentious now and horrendous, and a bit of a lovey, but that can be hard. So I can see that with a character.
Yeah. I find it...
That's such a... And
I'm hiding, really.
It's so weird, because I think I would find it so much more exposing.
I know, and a lot of people would, because a lot of the stuff I do on stage is in many ways much more humiliating than if I was talking about my life.
It's not even the humiliating. Clearly, I can live with being humiliated, clearly. But I feel like if I'd come up with a character and then I was like, oh, they just didn't like it, I think that would be worse for me.
Right, because
I've created something.
Yeah.
But it's not...
Yeah.
But if you've shared your experiences and they've rejected that, that's you.
Yeah,
Kind of both can be awful, basically.
Yeah.
Basically, why are we doing it?
What's going on? No, but do you know what? I guess it depends on what your skill set is. Like, I have confidence in my ability to tell stories about what I know and my experience. And I don't have any confidence in my ability to create something.
I find that so interesting, because don't you think that when you are telling stories, you are creating something? Like, is that not a creative skill?
And yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I guess.
It is. And
Yeah.
also, and we've talked about this, David, is that the version of you that is on stage talking about this, yes, it's true stories and it's authentically you, but it's a...
Yeah, it's an
exaggerated, it feels wrong because that sounds like it's dialed up. It's not, but it is a specific persona of you. It's not the full you.
And the one argument that I have heard is that all comedy, especially including stand-up, is character comedy.
Character comedy.
Everyone's
Yeah, it
doing
is
a
really, I
character.
suppose, isn't it?
I mean, it's Lorraine, isn't it?
But it's just a character that I haven't had to... The invention of the comedian isn't as... I couldn't come up with... Like, if you were like, be a strong... This is why I was terrible at drama school.
You go to drama school?
Yeah. I can't do that. I can't be an acorn into a tree. I can't do it.
Yeah, it's silly. I mean, that's why, because I did a lot of drama as well, unsurprisingly. Whenever people see me perform, they're like, "You're also an actor." I'm like, "Yeah, fair enough."
Interesting that you don't. That's not saying that you don't.
No, go on.
Well, just like so. One of my pet peeves is when you see someone doing straight stand-up and they come on and tell people they're an actor. I don't like that, because I feel like it explodes the...
Yeah, totally.
the construct
and so
of it all.
I feel like you're obviously feeling the same as that, as people come up to you and say that as
Yeah.
opposed to, because I would rather
Yeah.
people didn't know that I'd had that training. Because I think because I think
I'm fully trained.
This is as good as it gets.
I feel like it removes the illusion that I'm just stood
Yeah.
on stage talking
Yeah.
what's
Oh,
coming out of my brain,
totally.
which is obviously the illusion that stand-up comedy is, right?
Yeah. But it's so funny that you say that, because I think that's part of what character comedy is, and what the silliness of what I do comes from finding that sort of like training really absurd. No, I actually haven't been to drama school, but all those like theatre games,
Yeah.
but done with complete sincerity, is one of the funniest things in the world to me.
Yeah, the fact that
It's
there's
so
the fact that there are 9 million versions of Zip Zap Boing
It's so
says it
funny.
all, really.
But then I also do sort of love it and buy into it. In like, it's a funny like love-hate.
Before our
Never
next
in
gig, we'll do
time.
Zip Zap, play a game of Zip Zap Boing together.
warm
We'll get
up.
get ready. Yeah.
Vocal warm-ups.
I've never, because in the musical theatre group I'm in, we do Zip Zap Boing, and I never quite understand why we're doing it. I know it's reaction, is it? Is it observation and reaction?
All of that,
Well,
and
it's just like
coordination, and getting into your body,
listening out,
being
yeah.
present in the moment, all of that.
I'm not very good at that, am I?
You're quite terrible at all of those things. So, what does mediocre mean to you?
I think mediocre means unremarkable, in the most literal sense of like, this sounds really harsh, but sort of just not worth talking about. You know, I think mediocre is like not of note.
I mean, be careful, because I'm
I know.
attempting to make a career out of talking about it. So,
But I think that's what's so interesting about it, because when something is really bad, it is worth talking about.
yeah.
And obviously when something's really good. And I think that's what mediocre is. It's sort of just like, okay, it is, but there's nothing in particular
To grab you.
to shout
Bland,
about,
isn't it?
about this thing.
Bland and beige, and it's like indifference being the worst thing. Love and hate are
Yeah.
connected. I'd rather, no, I wouldn't rather be hated, obviously, but indifference feels worse.
Yeah, that's quite good, actually.
Came out quite brutal though, didn't it?
No,
but
but
I don't think
actually it
that's
makes
necessarily a bad
sense.
thing.
Yeah.
But I think that is I think that is what it is to me. It's just, it's not of note.
Yeah, I get
Yeah.
that.
Which is what you say in your show. And the thing is, the pull back and reveal for me is that you're not, obviously. I mean, you're standing on stage getting people to watch you.
I don't think that is the pullback.
I love it. The finale of your show is, actually, guys, I'm incredible. Plot twist.
You've
You've
just-
a little bit mediocre.
And I have your life and £7.50 of your money that you're not getting back.
It's more expensive at Volts. Okay, good. What do you love that everyone else thinks is mediocre?
Well, so yeah, I was thinking about this, and actually I think this is a very hard question, because most of the things that I love...
Let me tell you, other people that have been on the pod have had literal breakdowns
Yeah.
trying to answer. We didn't realise we were causing mental problems for people.
It feels like a contradiction, because most of the stuff I love, I love it because I don't think it's mediocre. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the point. Then I was thinking, what is mediocre by definition? Amdram. Amateur dramatics.
Yes.
And I think there's something so special. And it's kind of, I can expand this out, I guess, into like any hobby. And I actually think you should be mediocre at your hobbies. And there is something that I find magic, and this is what Amjam has, but anything that like oh God, I was once called a hobbyist by somebody, and this just came back to me. Sorry.
Some trauma repeating.
If you are genuinely a hobbyist, they were talking about my comedy, which is not a hobby. So I was,
Wow. That is harsh.
it was really horrible. It was, anyway. Sorry, that just came back to me.
Do you need to name and shame them?
No, but it was an agent that I had a meeting with who called me a hobbyist, who obviously is not my agent now.
Wow.
I have a much better agent, so jokes on them. But no, I think there's something like brilliant in that mediocrity, because that's the point of it. Like, you're not trying to make money out of it. You're not trying to be the best at it. You are doing it purely for the love and the joy of it. And sometimes I love watching somebody who is not bad at something, but just fine.
There is a breed of people that do particularly amdram, I think, who don't consider it to be a hobby, though, don't you think?
No, that, yeah.
I'm thinking of one of my mum's old friends when I was a kid.
And that's
She's
kind
taking
of
it very seriously.
funny and marvellous
Right?
as well, isn't
There's
it?
something quite
I
epic
think
about
that's
it.
what I mean, there's such a joy to somebody doing like a decent painting, and you think, good for you. You've had a lovely time. You've done a painting.
It's about the doing of it rather than the end
Yeah.
result. Not everything has to be the Mona Lisa or whatever, the doing of it. And
It's about the journey, not the
I'm
destination.
trying desperately not to say that, which is why I was losing weight. But I think there is.
Yeah, because I'm a massive perfectionist. I'm a classic Virgo. But I really struggle with that, and it's something that I'm trying to get better at. Because I mean, comedy is an interesting example because it did start as a hobby, and now is something that I'm doing professionally. But then I realised the other day I don't really have a hobby anymore. And I think it's quite important to do things that you don't try to monetize, that you don't try to be the best at, that you actually just do for the joy of doing them. And I'm bad at that.
The MT group that I'm in is, I'm going to be really rude to them now, probably. They're never going to speak to me about this. But I'd say we're a really good example of that. And when I think about the joy of doing it, it's the joy of, it's normally a Saturday afternoon. We do 2 hours. We're doing extra rehearsals at the moment, except I'm not, because it's happening now when I'm here. So it's, I can opt out of it, but it's the joy of coming together to do that, to make it happen, and all the nonsense and the fun and the silliness. And when it goes really well, it's great. And if it doesn't go well, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I went to see a show they did last week and they were excellent.
Great.
They were brilliant.
My accent wasn't. I had to do an American accent, and I can't do American accents.
Most of the people on the stage were excellent. It was really good. It was, and actually, so they did Legally Blonde, but they did like a gender confused version.
Well, it was gender irrelevant.
It was good. Yeah. It was really good.
It did make some of the scenes confusing though, because the courtroom scene that is very specifically about gender.
Within the show, there's the bit where they sing about is he gay or European?
Classic number.
Yeah. Absolutely, great song. But obviously, in that particular moment, gender's quite important when they're trying to assess whether he's attracted to the same sex or not. Yeah. It all got very slightly confusing.
Not helped by the fact that I had one line solo singing in that, which only got at the last minute because someone dropped out and I just couldn't remember it. So I just stood up and sang meaningless words. Did you notice that?
I thought all of the words you stood up and sang were meaningless words.
You know that awful moment we've all had on stage, I think? I very much the way you just stand up, you think my brain is just completely empty.
Yeah. I will say, not to use you as the example of this now, but this is what I'm talking about. Like, I love that. Like, there's such a pure joy in watching that kind of show where there's like a degree of chaos. Yeah. And it's like just the whole point is that it's mediocre. Yeah. And no one's pretending that it's not. And it makes me feel like warm and fuzzy inside.
And it's worth doing anyway. And I think that's really lovely. And it's interesting for me looking at that alongside doing my comedy now, which I'm trying not to be as a hobbyist. I'm trying to do seriously. And then that gives me different things. Now, it actually means that I need less of that performance time in the musical theatre group because I'm getting it in other ways.
Interesting.
I know this is fictional, so therefore not, but there's part of me that is desperate. I love the Archers. And every year there's normally a big thing about the Christmas show that Linda Snell, any other Archer listeners out there, and it's always everything about this. She takes it too seriously. She twists people's arm. I'd give anything to be an Archers show. Anyway, neither of you two watch it, so that's completely tumbleweed moment. But she's not doing it.
Please, sure,
if you're listening, Linda Snell.
Yeah.
Great.
And so I love that. I'm now just thinking about the line that I should have got right last week. But anyway, the moment's gone, Kate.
Not about you, Kate.
Yeah, all about me.
About you.
So can you tell us something about you that you think is mediocre?
Well, I suppose inspired by you, David, and the title of the show, was reflecting on how I often feel like a mediocre queer. And especially being, I'm bisexual woman. And I think there's a degree of like imposter syndrome that I sometimes feel. And I mean, as I go on my queer journey, less and less so, thankfully, but especially when I first came out and started being in queer spaces.
How long ago did you come out?
Well, again, it's like, which time? But yeah, I came out to my parents when I was like 14, but then had a boyfriend from like 16 to 19, so was like out but not like exploring that at all. So yeah, in my early 20s. And yeah, I would have that thing of being like, oh my God, I'm not gay enough and everyone knows. And I felt like I had to prove it. And especially like on dates with women, I think, I don't know, I'd be interested to hear what it's like for bisexual men, but I think there is a sense sometimes among queer women, there can be a degree of judgment, especially from lesbians. I've definitely had that before. There's a kind of, and I understand where it comes from. There's a skepticism because there are some women who kind of like experiment but aren't really, which again is fine, but I can understand how that's frustrating if you are like looking for a life partner. and you find yourself going on a date with all these kind of like women who've never dated a woman and are just like, oh, I don't know what I want, blah, blah, blah. So I understand where that comes from, but that feels scary when you're stepping into it because you're like, well, I don't know and I can't pretend that I do, but also I don't want to waste your time, but like I have to start somewhere and blah, blah, blah. So that kind of, I was
going to identify completely with that. And as someone who came out when she was 50 at the start of the lockdown, so I didn't really get a chance to do much about it for 2 years anyway. But I'm very conscious of that, and also the fact that because I've lived while it makes sense of things that I've done as well over the last 50 years, it does make sense of that. So it clearly was always there, but I didn't have the experience of growing up knowing that I was different. I didn't know I was different, but knowing that I was being able to put a name to it or having any of that journey. So when I hear people talking about their queer journeys, and it's not, this sounds awful, like I'm jealous of their trauma. I'm not, but I'm conscious that I don't have that, and I don't want to look like I'm piggybacking on it or...
Well, that's the thing is, it's a really different experience, I think. And it's a weird phrase to use, but like I'm aware that I can sometimes be straight passing, right? Which is a privilege. Like I don't necessarily always read as queer, like I can like talk about men I've dated and, you know. So that is a different experience. But equally, somebody told me a stat recently, apparently bisexual people are out to a smaller proportion of bisexual people are out to their close friends and family than gay people. Which actually makes sense, because you can get away with pretending, but there's a specific type of...
But not necessarily... So I feel like... So I've been remarkably quiet during this because I'm nervous about saying anything that's going to get me cancelled.
Because you don't believe in bisexuality.
No, I absolutely... I believe that you two exist because you're right here. I think there's something around... So you just said that pretending. I don't think it's that. There's something to do with passing. I mean, there is a number of gay men who have the privilege of passing. Yeah. Something I don't have. And that means that they have a really different experience of the world than I do. And like, as we're filming this at the moment, the whole thing in Qatar is on with the World Cup. And one of the things that came up is obviously that they chose not to wear the armbands because they were going to get a yellow card or whatever, something to do with football. No real idea what that means. But for me, that represents the same kind of thing because I don't pass, I don't get to be gay part-time. Yeah. Like on my journey here, it's obvious. I live this life. I don't get to make that choice. And so when you get an ally, like, say, the England football captain saying, do you know what, I'm going to wear this armband and that will be supportive. And then as soon as it causes them something inconvenient, they then don't do it. That like grates because I don't have the option to opt in and out. And so I wonder, this is specifically not how I feel, but I do wonder if part of the problem comes about if you meet people who can pass, whether that's because of how they appear or because they're bisexual and therefore they may date somebody of the opposite sex for a period of time. There's almost that thing where like, well, you get to opt out if it gets difficult. Yeah. Which not everybody does. But I do wonder if there's an element of that. Like, not how I feel.
That's very clear. But
I do wonder if there's that because I'm very acutely aware. Like I felt really strongly about the armband thing about the football because it was just like, I can't opt out of this. Yeah. Ever. Yeah. It's been this way forever. And it really makes it obvious to me that I don't want an ally like that who, as soon as it affects you. That's not an ally. Exactly, right? As soon as it affects you, then you don't do it. If you're not going to put up with the pain, 2 days after 5 people got shot in a gay club, we don't get to opt out. So I think there's something to do with the passing and the opting out. But that really, I think, needs to be more of an educational thing within our community because it's not... because obviously we are all a group of people that are learning as well. And where language is so important. For example, where perhaps historically we would use the word clean, where we now wouldn't, to describe like someone who isn't HIV positive. But now we don't say... We wouldn't say clean because that's the wrong sort of language. And so over time we've learned. And I feel like there's some work to be done here, like in the discussion around bisexuality and things like that, because historically, potentially, say, lesbians have felt less like they want to date somebody who's bisexual. Do you see what I mean? Yeah,
it's funny because there is that thing, I think this is true of gay men as well, of like gold star lesbians and gold star gays, which... Who are people who've like never had sex with the opposite sex, which I think that, that in itself is the idea that is like a badge of honor and that makes you a better gay. is really difficult.
It's so God,
You're looking.
it's something that I feel really strongly about.
Yeah.
I'm technically a platinum gay.
I was going to bring up. Okay, well done, Brad.
Well done, you.
No, but this
Well
is
done,
the
you
point.
for refusing to come out naturally.
But this is the point. Like for me, I find that whole discussion really repulsive because it's built in misogyny.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think it's like so we're a member of a gay dance company, and there's lots of like kids who are like in their early 20s and they will have conversations like this, and I feel like I have to speak up because it's really easy for there to be quite a lot of misogyny within the gay male community.
Yeah, definitely.
And I can't be doing with it. And it plays in like it's the same thing.
And actually, to come full circle here, that's what I felt in, because I mean, side point, there are not very many spaces for queer women at all.
Yeah.
So I've been in a lot of gay bars that are predominantly men.
We were in a group of gay men last night and we had that discussion, didn't we? So we do recognise it.
Yeah.
We're not opening any bars for you, but we recognise it.
Thank you for that.
But the thing
Awareness
about
is all that matters.
The thing about that then I have found hard, and again, it's like that imposter thing, is whether or not it's true, I have the impression sometimes that those men are looking at me and thinking, oh, it's a woman in a gay bar. She's coming to have a fun time. Oh, isn't that nice? And I want to be like, I'm one of you.
Yeah.
I find myself engineering the conversation to make
exactly. Like, when I was
absolutely
dating a woman,
If I had
As a
a pound for
bisexual
every time
woman.
Kate's like, I'm bisexual, I could retire.
One of my friends was in. She went for the first time to her their LGBTQ network meeting at work, and they were chatting afterwards, and somebody was chatting to her and went, "Oh, so like, where do you fit in here?" And she went, "Oh, I'm bisexual," and he was like, No, in the company. And I was like, it's the most relatable thing ever, because then one of them turned to her and was like, you don't have to like qualify your queerness, it's so fine. But I just,
I mean, the gay bar and the gay club thing, really, that's an issue with straight people taking over our spaces.
Of course. It was funny, I went to a gay bar in Amsterdam, so cultured, this weekend, and one of my friends was like, oh, anyone catch your eye? And I was like, maybe. And he was like, you can't kiss a boy here, by the way. And I was like, really? And he was like, no, like if a man and a woman, or who are perceived to be a man and woman, kiss, they will be thrown out of this bar. It's a very like protected queer space.
I'm kind of on board with that.
Well, yeah, no,
I mean, to be honest,
you can possibly you want.
Possibly burnt at the stake would be a more appropriate dealing with the situation.
It was funny because I was like, but what if it's two bisexual people kissing? I was like, that's But I understand.
But the point is that can happen anywhere.
Yes.
Yeah, and our spaces are so frequently being taken over by hen parties.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like we were somewhere the other way and there was a stag do there and it's like, what? So that's why it comes up. But I can see why it makes things really difficult.
And it was funny though, because I totally understand it. And I think I do actually agree with it as a policy, but I was just like, oh, that's really weird. Like that I therefore, I don't know.
So you're actually the second female comedian that we have spoken to recently who says that they're not very queer presenting or feels like they're not very queer presenting. And I'm just sat here going, you look pretty queer presenting to me. I would not approach you and be like, no, you shouldn't be in this gay bar, lady. I would be like, here's a nice lady for you to meet.
I have two thoughts on this. The first is I think that's really interesting because I think there is, thankfully, the idea of what a queer woman looks like, I think, is being broadened. And I think part of it is that I grew up lesbians firstly, there were no bisexual women in the culture that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
And then the lesbians in culture, especially in the early 2000s, are like really butch. And I think I was always like, well, I'm not that. And so, therefore, am I not a lesbian? Like, it was...
Yeah. I mean, representation of queer people of both sexes and all orientations has been and still is poor. Yeah,
and it's one of those things where it really, really profoundly affected, like, how I grappled with my identity. Because for a long time, I was like, that isn't me. So therefore, am I not that? Do you know what I mean?
100%.
Really,
completely,
It's very difficult to be what you can't see.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
Like that. Put that on a T-shirt. But then the other thing...
I probably have at some point. You'll probably find that in my store.
But the other thing, for better or worse, is that I have actually been more deliberate about it. But in a way that is like quite affirming to me. I've actually... This is a new haircut, but before this I had a mullet. And I had a mullet for 2 years. And part of that was like, yeah, I want to look really gay. And it was really funny because people assumed I was straight up until that point when they would first meet me. And then I had the complete opposite where people would assume I was gay and then would be surprised that I was bi. And it was just like interesting and I think very helpful for me to have that experience. Yeah. And I think I'm now sort of netting out somewhere in the middle. And
that's because when I was probably going through the final bits of figuring out who I was, I had undercuts and I had colours put in my hair. And I think it was, and I wanted to be more demonstrative, and it ended up getting more and more rainbow to the point of being not great. But now that I've sort of gone through that, this is incredibly straight hair, I suppose. But
yeah, it's that thing of like, I am feeling different inside and I need that.
Yeah.
I need people to see that. Like I need that. Because I have a friend who, when they came out as non-binary, presented really androgynous, but now are playing with that gender expression a lot more again. And it's interesting to see how sometimes you almost need to be like, newsflash, something's different.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that, you can kind of work.
You've got to learn.
My nose piercing was an
up,
important part of that as well, for heaven's sake. But yeah, absolutely classic, isn't it? Oh. Yeah.
But it is about, you can't work out. You've got to try these identities on, right?
Yeah.
Which is something that I don't feel like it was as easy to do previously. But now when you need to take some time to settle into your queerness and who you are, and then you can start to play with that identity. And I say that as someone who's only recently grown long hair, despite wanting it for like 20 years.
Looks great.
Thanks. I mean, obviously not recently grown it because it
takes
2 years of growth. But
yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, amazing, really interesting. Where can we find you online and where can we see you? Other than at the Queer Comedy Club, but where else can people find you?
I am on Instagram, Kathy MM, Kathy with a K, and all my gigs and stuff are on there. Me and my comedy partner host a character comedy night called The Horsies, which is every couple of months at the Glory. And then, yes, I'm working on this solo show, so all the dates of the festivals and
that'll all be on your socials.
All be on there.
Amazing. Yeah. So we will make sure that we follow up and come and see you. You can find me on Instagram at Mr. David Ian. You can check out my website, davidian.co.uk.
And you can find me on Instagram at KTS Dale. And I'm also working on my one-woman show, which will be doing various festivals. Leicester, Brighton, and details of that will be on my socials as well.
And you can check out queercomedyclub.co.uk for tickets to see people like us and loads of other amazing comedians. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Mediocre Gay, the podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps other people find the show.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Mediocre Gay Pod, or share your mediocre secrets with us on mediocregaypod@gmail.com.